Today we're diving into a deeply significant moment in modern Indian history. We are looking at the 2012 Delhi gang rape case, a tragedy that quite literally shook an entire nation to its core. We're going to trace the chronological facts of the incident, the unprecedented societal response, and ultimately the profound legal and structural changes it forced within the Indian justice system. This isn't just a recounting of a criminal case, you guys. It's a look at a watershed moment that forever altered how a society approaches the safety of women.
Before we really get going, I need to note that this explainer covers some incredibly heavy material, specifically incidents of sexual violence and murder. Now, we are completely avoiding graphic details, and our focus is strictly on the systemic facts, the investigation, the trial, and the legal significance. It's absolutely crucial that we approach this subject with the utmost respect and stick to the structural aftermath.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the incident itself and the immediate struggle, then move into the nationwide outrage it sparked. After that, we'll look at the rapid-fire investigation, the years-long legal battle, and finally, the historic legal reforms that became the lasting legacy of this case.
So, let's start at the beginning, the incident and the initial struggle on the night of December 16, 2012.
This all centers on a 23-year-old physiotherapy intern named Jyoti Singh. The media and the nation would later call her Nirbhaya, which actually translates to fearless. After catching a movie in Delhi, she and a male friend hopped onto what they thought was a standard public bus to head home. But things escalated terrifyingly fast. The people operating the bus, who were doing so illegally, started harassing them. When Jyoti's friend tried to defend her, he was beaten and overpowered. Jyoti was then subjected to a brutal sexual assault while the bus was still moving. Eventually, the attackers threw both victims out onto the side of the road. Passers-by thankfully spotted them and called for help, and Jyoti was rushed to intensive care. She went through multiple surgeries, and her condition was so critical that they actually airlifted her to a specialized hospital in Singapore for advanced treatment. But despite everyone's tireless efforts, Jyoti passed away on December 29th. Her tragic death essentially turned an already horrific crime into a full-blown murder case.
Which brings us to the immediate societal reaction, the massive nationwide outrage, and the absolute demand for justice.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the news didn't just stay in Delhi. It spread like wildfire across the whole country. We aren't just talking about a few small protests. This became one of modern India's largest mass movements. Thousands of people flooded India Gate and public spaces everywhere. And the crowds? It was literally everyone. Students, lawyers, activists, and everyday citizens standing shoulder to shoulder. They wanted basic justice, sure, but they were also demanding systemic change, drastically stricter laws, and real safety for women. People realized that this horrific local incident completely exposed the severe underlying flaws in how the entire justice system handled sexual offenses.
So with the whole country watching, the investigation and the fast-track trial had to move at lightning speed.
The Delhi police were under immense pressure, and they moved incredibly fast. Relying on statements from eyewitnesses and rigorous forensic evidence, they tracked down and arrested the perpetrators. The accused were Ram Singh, who was the bus driver, along with Mukesh Singh, Vinay Sharma, Pawan Gupta, Akshay Kumar Singh, and a sixth individual who was actually a juvenile when the incident happened.
Because of the sheer gravity and public urgency of the situation, a special fast-track court was established. The prosecution built a really airtight case. They brought in comprehensive medical evidence, witness testimonies, and forensics to irrevocably link these men to the crime. Crucially, Jyoti Singh's dying declaration, the statement she gave before she passed away, was the cornerstone of this case. The court found the charges proven beyond a reasonable doubt, and by September 2013, the 4 adult men were sentenced to death.
But here's where things get really complicated. You see, there was a stark contrast in the sentencing. While the adults were tried in that fast-track court and got the death penalty, the 6th accused was under 18. That meant his case had to go through the juvenile justice system. Under the laws at the time, the absolute maximum sentence he could get was 3 years in a reform home. That massive discrepancy for the exact same crime sparked an intense nationwide debate about India's juvenile laws, and it really added fuel to the fire for sweeping legal reform.
Oh, and there was another major development involving the bus driver Ram Singh. In March 2013, right in the middle of the trial, he was found dead inside Tihar jail. The authorities officially ruled it a suicide, though naturally it generated a lot of speculation. But the important takeaway here is that the legal system didn't stall. The trial proceedings for everyone else continued completely uninterrupted.
Okay, moving on to the incredibly long legal battle that followed, bringing this all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Now, what's really interesting here is the specific language the Supreme Court used when the appeals finally reached them in 2017. They completely refused to interfere with the convictions. They upheld the death penalty and explicitly stated that the crime was extremely brutal and inhuman. They ruled that it strictly fell into the rarest of rare category, which, in India, is the vital legal threshold required to actually apply capital punishment.
Following that definitive 2017 ruling, the convicts essentially exhausted every single legal remedy left on the table. It follows a very structured sequence. First, they filed review petitions. When those failed, they tried curative petitions. And finally, as an absolute last resort, they submitted mercy petitions directly to the President of India. Step by step, the system examined them, and step by step, every single one was rejected.
Let's take a step back and see how this builds up over time. We're looking at a nearly 7-year legal marathon, from the initial fast-track sentence back in September 2013 to the Supreme Court upholding it in 2017, all the way to March 20th, 2020. That was the day the final execution warrants were carried out and the 4 men were executed into hard jail. It marked the definitive end to one of the most widely discussed criminal cases in Indian history.
But the real legacy of this case isn't just a criminal conviction. It's the permanent, historic, structural changes it left behind.
Way before the trial ended, in direct response to that massive public outcry, the government realized the existing laws just weren't cutting it. So, they officially formed a committee headed by former Chief Justice J.S. Verma. The Verma Committee had one highly critical objective: to thoroughly evaluate and suggest robust, tough reforms for India's sexual offense laws.
So the crucial point is what actually materialized from those recommendations. It culminated in the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 2013, which was a total game changer. Punishments for rape became significantly harsher. Behaviors like stalking and voyeurism, which used to be handled ambiguously, were finally given strict legal recognition as crimes. Severe penalties were brought in for acid attacks, and the law mandated much faster investigations and trials. On top of all that, the government established the Nirbhaya Fund, a dedicated financial resource to back projects specifically aimed at keeping women safe across the country.
The Nirbhaya case is remembered as a horrific tragedy, but also as the catalyst for a massive national awakening. But as we look at all these immense legal milestones that were achieved on paper, it leaves us with a really profound question to ponder. After the creation of the Nirbhaya Fund and all these strict laws in 2013, has our society truly achieved the day-to-day safety and security that millions of people marched for back in 2012? It's a question that challenges us to look beyond the courtroom and evaluate the reality of our social progress. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep learning and keep asking the important questions.